This is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host on SNN.Network. And joining me right now is Giulio Bonifacio. He's the president and CEO of Sabre Gold Mines. It's a publicly traded company. I got two symbols for you: SGLD on the TSX and AGAUF on the OTCQB. And Sabre is participating at the Precious Metal Summit Beaver Creek hybrid event this year, happening right now, September 8th through the 11th. And with that, Giulio, thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thank you for having us, Robert.
It's great to have you. So this is our first time doing an interview together. So I'd love to start off with a quick overview and history of the company, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, by all means. Sabre Gold, first day of trading was today. It's a combination of two companies, one being Golden Predator, the other one being Arizona Gold Mines Corp. Both companies have advanced assets, one going into production called Copperstone by next year. The second one being Brewery Creek, that's probably likely 2 years out. And it was just a good opportunity to combine the talent that we have on both sides of the equation, as well as the projects, both of which are near-term production brownfields assets, one located in Arizona, one located in the Yukon. It also blends together a combined resource base of 2.6 million ounces and greatly improves our balance sheet. So when you look at cash on hand, short-term investments, and you look at these two assets specifically, there's other assets in the portfolio, but these two assets and the production that they can bring forth, I think, will be very intriguing for many shareholders. And first, we're taking this Copperstone project into production first and foremost. We've got the balance sheet to do that. Secondly, use that capital that gets generated, which every year of mine life on Copperstone generates $15 to $20 million in cash flow. That's just a great model on a go-forward basis. And I would also say that on a comparable basis, we're not 10 years or 15 years away from production. It's smaller scale, relatively speaking, but the combined platform would look at anywhere from 50,000 ounces starting next year, growing to about 150,000 ounces with success on both projects. And there's further expandability in terms of what that could ultimately look like. Very good.
So what would you say makes Sabre unique and different compared to some of your peers out there?
Well, I mean, I kind of touched on it, but it's worth repeating. Two assets that are near-term production. I mean, that in itself is very uncommon for any companies that have market caps below $400 million. Secondly, both projects have had a wealth of work done on them. So there's a benefit from our standpoint in terms of how do we best identify the future opportunities. And both at Copperstone, there's a real ability to grow it further. It was a past producer, produced 500,000 ounces by way of an open pit. Detachment fault type structure geology. So is there another parallel structure alongside? Those are things that we can chase later on, but in the interim, it's about generating cash flow, going into production, and also bringing that second asset into production in short term. And I think what you'll find is something that differs greatly is very few companies in this value range, if you will, have that in front of them. And I think that's what for most shareholders will start to appreciate, and they'll see a re-rating. Not to mention the 2.6 million ounces on the book and upside with respects to that endowment. But secondly, on a per ounce basis, it's trading at a discount, and understandably so, because now, this combination is what's creating the platform. And it's more about getting out and doing things like this to educate and communicate appropriately to the market players that here's a real opportunity here that just makes a bunch of sense in simple terms.
Absolutely. So what would you say is your background? You kind of touched on it a little bit at the beginning, how this is a new company combination, Golden Predator and Arizona Gold Corp. So, what was your background prior to this whole new
finance? I'm a professional accountant. I've been in the mining space for, you probably tell by a bit of my gray hair, been in the mining space for plus 30 years, so a long time. Been with large companies, small companies. Most recently, though, I was the founder of a company called Nevada Copper, and took it from an early stage to an advanced stage, and it was ultimately acquired in a big way from a private equity group, and they've taken it forward. But getting it permitted, doing all the studies, and putting in place a production size shaft was an exercise in itself. But we added value all the way through, and since my departure, it's kind of moved in a different direction. But that was a very good growth platform for myself, and it was frankly just a bunch of fun. And at the end, it was just the right time for me to step away and retire. So I did retire for a brief period of time, been in the space, but then Copperstone presented itself, and it was more about what can we do on this project. And I think I've taken it a long way from where it was, both at the project level, but both relative to the capital needs of the company. And it's in part what contributed to being able to do a transaction with Golden Predator that now creates what is a pretty robust platform. You know, again, 2.6 million ounces, excuse me, and near-term production by next year, followed by further production 3 years out.
Speaking of which, you know, and you've touched on it quite a bit already. So I would say let's hone in on a few. So from what you can tell us, what would you say are the 1 to 2 things that investors should really understand about this new venture?
I think you properly value what production means and how difficult it is to get a project fully permitted and cash flowing, and also appreciate that because of the wealth of work that was done on these assets, the cost to take them into production is modest by comparison. So it's not a new discovery that you have to go through a series of resource updates followed by various engineering studies, followed by permitting. It's something that's, you know, right in front of them in simple terms. And it's also got growth prospects that shouldn't be ignored. And then Brewery Creek in itself is a second asset, you know, that's sitting on approximately 2 million ounces and growing, but how much of that can be leached? But it's also brownfield, so it was in production. And because it was in production, going through the permitting hurdle, which is a very challenging scenario, and I've done it here a couple of times, we know it's achievable and manageable. And we think permitting on that project takes us probably a couple of years, potentially could trickle a little bit beyond that, but not much. And then follow on by construction on that project that gets us to a growth platform that is really attractive from a value standpoint. So, you know, the skill set, the team, my chief operating officer and the team that he's built below him is pretty significant. And it's really about execution and having all the right individuals in place. And that was also a big contributor for Golden Predator to agree to the merger with Arizona Gold, which is now, as I said, the first day of trading, Sabre Gold Mines Corp, and in trading on the Toronto Stock Exchange. We also have an OTC listing as well. So I think it's one step in many, but the platform is what entices us the most. And the directors and officers are significant shareholders, so we have a lot of skin in the game, and we've written some big checks, and we will continue to do so as needed. So I don't think we typically see that in certain other ventures, and I'm not trying to downplay those ventures, but you know, again, if you look at the people involved, you look at the serious money that's been written, you look at near-term production, and you know, anytime you build anything from a house to a mine, costs are always higher than you initially anticipate. So this is no different. But because much of the stuff is in place already, the infrastructure, you've got 4,300 meters of underground development, you've got a mill. So you're simply looking at refurbishment and conversion of whole or leach. It's bite size, you know, so is the capital going to be 25 million? No. Is it going to be a bit higher than that? Yeah, very likely, but nothing that's going to upset what the economics look like. It's part of doing the business. And fortunately for us, gold prices are in a very, very good range. And so as we add mine life, every year of mine life that we add, we think we're at about 6 to 7 years currently. Every year that we add, you know, puts about $20 million to EBITDA. So the value proposition changes in terms of how you should value a project that's in production. It also helps us with the subsequent project that we want to take forward, Brewery Creek. It'll help us fund the project, build it out. It's a lot larger in terms of the capital requirement, but not insurmountable. It's about $125 million based on our current cap. But we are going to come out with an updated set of economics, specifically called the Preliminary Economic Assessment 43-101. That's going to come out likely sometime in November, is our current thinking, November, December.
Very good. All right. So Giulio, with that, where can our audience go and find more information on Sabre Gold?
Just essentially, there's a mailing list that you can get added to, or email list, if you will. And there's our website, sabre.gold, www.sabre.gold. It's all on all the information available. So it's a good starting point. And then the news flow on a go-forward basis, we'll put a series of press releases that will update the investors appropriately.
Very good. And that's www.sabre.gold.
Correct.
Giulio, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. Good luck. Stay safe. And I look forward to our next update.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Robert. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Again, my name is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host on SNN.Network, and we're a proud media sponsor for the Precious Metals Summit Beaver Creek hybrid event happening right now, September 8th through the 11th. Sabre is participating, and thank you all for watching.